Pain is the most honest teacher you will ever encounter. It strips away illusion faster than comfort ever could. When you are in pain, real soul-level pain, you can no longer hide behind your distractions, your excuses, or your masks. Pain cuts directly to the truth of your condition. It tells you something in your life is misaligned. Something inside you demands attention, repair, or transformation. Most people try to silence pain as though it were an enemy, but pain is not your adversary, it's your signal. It's the alarm bell of your psyche ringing, insisting that you look closer at what you've ignored. Every ache of the soul is a message. Wake up. You're not where you're supposed to be. The tragedy of our age is that we have become experts at numbing pain rather than understanding it. We medicate our wounds with distraction, with entertainment, with endless noise. But what happens when you drown out the alarm instead of answering it? You don't escape suffering, you delay its consequences. Pain that is ignored does not disappear, it festers. It deepens into bitterness, anxiety, resentment, or even despair. You start believing the world is cruel, not realizing it's your avoidance that's keeping you trapped. Awareness doesn't come from escape. It comes from endurance, from sitting with the discomfort long enough to hear what it's trying to say. True awareness begins at the moment of confrontation. When you finally stop running and allow yourself to feel, something remarkable happens. Your perception widens. You begin to see the patterns of your behavior, the fears that govern your choices, the lies you've told yourself to avoid responsibility. Pain brings these truths to the surface with brutal clarity. It's not gentle, but it's necessary. Awareness is not born from comfort. It's born from crisis. The things that break you also reveal you. They tear open the surface and expose the raw material of who you are and who you might become if you dare to evolve. Through pain, humility takes root. You start realizing that you are not as invincible, as righteous, or as certain as you once believed. Pain humbles the ego, softens pride, and introduces compassion. When you've suffered deeply, you see the suffering of others differently. You no longer dismiss it. You recognize the shared fragility of being human. That empathy, that ability to see beyond your own self, is awareness expanding outward. It's the understanding that life is not meant to be pain, free but purpose-filled. You begin to sense that your suffering, when faced truthfully, can serve something greater than your own comfort. In the end, pain becomes not just a wound, but a doorway. Every time you endure it consciously, you walk closer to self, knowledge, and strength. Pain shows you what truly matters. It refines your values, reorders your priorities, and reawakens your hunger for meaning. Awareness is not a gift, it's a reward earned through struggle. The portal is narrow, and it demands courage to walk through. But once you do, you see that the pain was never there to destroy you. It was there to open your eyes. Suffering is the great equalizer of human experience. It finds everyone, regardless of status, belief, or ambition. You can neither buy your way out of it nor escape it through denial. Yet, the way you respond to suffering determines the entire direction of your life. Most people experience pain and immediately look for someone or something to blame. Their parents, their past, society, luck, or fate. But the truth is this: the moment you assign all your suffering to external forces, you surrender your power to grow. Responsibility is not about fault. It's about ownership. You may not have caused the storm, but it is still your duty to steer the ship. When suffering enters your life, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to resentment, the other to responsibility. Resentment feels easier at first. It lets you cling to the illusion of innocence, to the comforting belief that you're merely a victim of circumstance. But resentment poisons you quietly. It transforms pain into bitterness and breeds contempt for life itself. Responsibility, on the other hand, is heavier to lift. It requires that you look your suffering in the eye and ask, "What now? What can I do with this?" That single question changes everything. It turns chaos into challenge and despair into direction. Responsibility doesn't erase pain, but it gives it purpose. There's something noble in carrying your suffering with integrity. When you take responsibility, you begin to recognize that every hardship can either destroy your character or forge it. The difference lies in your willingness to bear the weight consciously. To take responsibility is to refuse to be defined by what happened to you, and instead define yourself by how you respond. It's not a passive endurance, it's an active engagement with reality. You accept that life is unjust at times, but you refuse to let that injustice make you smaller. Responsibility transforms suffering from a random event into a sacred task, to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate because of it. Taking responsibility for your suffering also means rejecting self-pity. Self-pity whispers that you deserve escape, that you're entitled to comfort, that life owes you relief. But the truth is harsher and more liberating. Life owes you nothing. You owe yourself the courage to face it. The moment you stop waiting for someone to save you and decide to bear the burden yourself, you begin to change. The act of carrying your pain deliberately, voluntarily reshapes your spirit. It disciplines your mind, sharpens your will, and hardens your resolve. You start realizing that suffering is not there to break you. It's there to see if you are willing to rise. Ultimately, responsibility is what transforms suffering into meaning. When you take ownership of your pain, you discover a deeper truth, that within suffering lies the seed of growth. You become a participant in your own evolution, not a passive victim of fate. Every person who has ever done something noble, every healer, every artist, every leader, has done so not in spite of their suffering, but because of it. They bore their pain and turned it into light. You are called to do the same. To carry your suffering is to carry your humanity. To turn it into purpose is to carry your soul. Responsibility, then, is not just a burden. It's the birthplace of transformation. Healing is not a gentle process. It is a war between what you want to believe and what you must accept. Most people confuse healing with comfort, assuming that to heal means to feel better. But true healing is not the soothing of pain. It is the facing of truth. And truth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. Healing demands that you confront the parts of yourself you have buried, the memories you've avoided, and the emotions you've numbed for years. You cannot outrun your own shadow. The wounds you refuse to face will not fade. They will quietly dictate your choices, shape your relationships, and sabotage your potential until you turn around and meet them head on. Escaping pain may feel easier in the moment. Distraction, denial, or emotional numbness can make life tolerable for a while. But escape is never free. It accumulates interest. The more you run, the heavier your wounds become. Avoidance does not erase pain. It multiplies it. You can bury trauma under achievement, noise, or even false positivity, but it will still surface sometimes in your anger, sometimes in your exhaustion, sometimes in your inability to trust or feel joy. Healing begins only when you stop running and start listening. The wound you refuse to confront becomes your master. The one you face becomes your teacher. To confront your wounds is to look directly into the chaos within you and say, I will not turn away. It requires radical honesty, the kind that shatters your self-image and exposes your frailty. You must admit how much you've been hurt, how deeply you've been afraid, and how long you've been pretending to be fine. This confrontation is terrifying because it feels like death. The death of denial, the death of control, the death of the person you thought you were. But that death is necessary. Healing is not about returning to who you were before you were broken. It's about becoming someone wiser, braver, and more whole because of the break. The process of confrontation is not solitary pain. It's structured courage. You face your fears one piece at a time. You examine the story you've been telling yourself about what happened and what it means. You stop saying, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" That shift, small but profound, transforms you from victim to participant in your own restoration. You begin to see patterns in your pain, the lessons about boundaries, truth, vulnerability, and strength that could not have been learned any other way. The more you confront, the more power you reclaim. You start realizing that pain was never the enemy. It was the suppressed truth trying to find its way out. In the end, confrontation is the price of freedom. Healing without confrontation is illusion. It's just emotional anesthesia. You cannot be healed and hiding at the same time. The only way to move past your pain is through it. When you finally face the wound, it loses its power to control you. The emotions you feared most, grief, guilt, rage, transform into understanding and clarity. You discover that the darkness you were running from was never there to destroy you. It was there to wake you up. Confrontation is the act of reclaiming yourself. Healing begins the moment you stop escaping and dare to see what your pain has been trying to show you all along. Light does not emerge from ease. It is forged in the depths of darkness. Every human being will eventually confront moments where the familiar collapses when certainty dissolves, meaning disappears, and life itself seems to lose its coherence. In those moments, the darkness feels absolute. It strips you of comfort, of identity, of illusion. Yet, paradoxically, that same darkness becomes the soil where your deepest strength begins to grow. Without it, there would be no awakening, no wisdom, no maturity of spirit. The light that truly transforms you is not borrowed from outside sources. It is discovered painfully and deliberately within the shadows of your own suffering. Darkness is not merely the absence of light. It is the space where potential hides. In darkness, everything that has been ignored comes forward. Your insecurities, your failures, your guilt, all the unhealed fragments of your past reveal themselves. Most people recoil from this revelation because it threatens the fragile image they have built of themselves. But if you can endure the sight of your own imperfections without flinching, you start to understand that the darkness is not punishment, it's purification. It burns away falsehood and demands authenticity. It forces you to see yourself as you truly are, and that vision, though painful, is the first flicker of real light. The path out of darkness is not found through denial but through transformation. You do not conquer the dark by fighting it, you illuminate it by integrating it. The parts of yourself you once called weak, sinful, or broken can become your greatest sources of empathy and strength if you learn to accept them. It's in the darkness that courage is tested and compassion is born. The person who has never suffered cannot understand tenderness, cannot see clearly into another's pain. Only the one who has walked through darkness with open eyes can truly carry light not as decoration, but as responsibility. Light is not brightness, it is understanding. You cannot be reborn in the light until you have died in the dark. Every transformation demands a descent, a journey into the underworld of your own psyche. It's there in that silent struggle that your old identity disintegrates. You begin to realize that everything you feared losing was never the essence of who you are. The darkness strips away the temporary so that the eternal can emerge. This process is not comfortable, it's crucifying, but that is the price of enlightenment, to let your illusions perish so that truth can rise in their place. The darkness is not the enemy of light. It is its mother. Without one, the other cannot exist. And when you finally rise from the darkness, you do not come out the same. You emerge with a steadiness that cannot be faked, a wisdom that cannot be taught, and a compassion that cannot be imitated. You no longer chase light as a symbol of escape. You carry it as a state of being. The light that is born from darkness is not fragile, it's sacred. It's the light of understanding, of resilience, of humility. It's the awareness that life is not meant to be free of shadow, but illuminated by it. You realize that darkness was never your destroyer, it was your teacher, and through it you've learned the greatest truth of all. That light, to have meaning, must first know the dark. Transformation is often romanticized, as if becoming a new version of yourself is some graceful unfolding, a peaceful process of self-improvement. But real transformation is not a gentle evolution, it's a death. It's the tearing down of everything false, the burning of the old self, the confrontation with everything you've hidden, feared, and denied. When people say they want change, what they usually mean is that they want improvement without discomfort, progress without pain. But that's not transformation, that's decoration. Transformation begins when comfort ends. It is the radical dismantling of the person you once were, so that something truer and stronger can emerge in your place. To transform, you must first surrender the illusion of control. The process will not ask for your permission, it will demand your participation. You will be stripped of certainty, familiarity, and security. Every belief you've built about who you are and what you deserve will be tested. This is not cruelty, it's necessary destruction. A snake cannot grow without shedding its skin. Likewise, you cannot grow without shedding outdated identities, broken habits, and self-deceptions that keep you small. But here's the tragedy. Most people choose to remain unchanged because the pain of the familiar feels safer than the fear of the unknown. They confuse survival with life. Transformation requires that you risk comfort for authenticity. In the process of rebirth, there will be moments when you feel lost, hollow, and even hopeless. That's because the old version of you is dying, and death always hurts. You will grieve not only the things you've lost, but also the illusions that once comforted you. The transformation process will expose your dependence on approval, on certainty, on the narratives you built to protect your ego. But in that grief lies the seed of freedom. The pain you feel is the sound of the old structure collapsing. If you can endure it without retreating, if you can let the old self dissolve without rushing to rebuild, you make space for something entirely new. Clarity, integrity, and peace not dependent on circumstance. Rebirth does not happen overnight. It's a long, deliberate unfolding of awareness. You begin to see that the very struggles that once tormented you are the catalysts that refine you. The pain that once broke you now becomes the fuel for your strength. Slowly, the chaos inside you starts to reorganize into something meaningful. You develop discipline where there was confusion, compassion where there was bitterness, and wisdom where there was ignorance. You stop fighting life as an adversary and begin to work with it as a sculptor works with stone patiently, purposefully, willing to be shaped by what hurts. That's the paradox of transformation. You only gain control by first relinquishing it. When you finally emerge from transformation, you realize that the rebirth was not about becoming someone new. It was about returning to who you were meant to be all along. The false layers fall away, and what remains is something raw, honest, and unshakable. You no longer crave comfort because you understand that comfort is the death of growth. You no longer fear change because you've lived through your own collapse and survived it. You carry the scars not as reminders of pain, but as symbols of initiation. Transformation is not the polishing of the surface. It's the reconstruction of the soul. It's not comfort. It's not ease. It's rebirth. And rebirth always begins in fire.